Last time we were together, we looked at the big overview story of Moses and the burning bush found in the book of Exodus in the Hebrew Bible. And for the next 3 weeks, we're going to be zooming in and focusing on just a portion of that story. So we begin today with the interaction between Moses and his brother Aaron. Here are these excerpts from the book of Exodus, chapters 2 through 4. Then the Lord said, "I've clearly seen my people oppressed in Egypt. I've heard their cry of injustice because of their slave masters. I know about their pain. I've seen just how much the Egyptians have oppressed them. So get going. I'm sending you to Pharaoh to bring my people, the Israelites, out of Egypt." But Moses said to God, "Who am I to go to Pharaoh and to bring the Israelites out of Egypt?" God said, "I'll be with you, and this will show you that I'm the one who sent you. After you bring the people out of Egypt, you will come back here and worship God on this mountain." But Moses said to the Lord, "My Lord, I've never been able to speak well, not yesterday, not the day before, and certainly not now, since you've been talking to your servant. I have a slow mouth and a thick tongue." Then the Lord said to him, "Who gives people the ability to speak? Who's responsible for making them unable to speak, or hard of hearing, sighted, or blind? Isn't it I, the Lord? Now go, I'll help you speak, and I'll teach you what you should say." But Moses said, "Please, my Lord, just send someone else." Then the Lord got angry at Moses and said, "What about your brother Aaron, the Levite? I know he can speak very well. He's on his way out to meet you now, and he's looking forward to seeing you. Speak to him and tell him what he's supposed to say. I'll help both of you speak, and I'll teach both of you what to do. Aaron will speak for you to the people. He'll be a spokesperson for you, and you will be like God for him. Take this shepherd's rod with you too, so that you can do the signs." Moses went back to his father-in-law Jethro and said to him, "Please let me go back to my family in Egypt and see whether or not they're still living." Jethro said to Moses, "Go in peace." The Lord said to Aaron, "Go into the desert to meet Moses." So he went, and Aaron met him at God's mountain and greeted him with a kiss. Moses told Aaron what the Lord had said about his mission and all the signs that the Lord had told him to do. Then Moses and Aaron called together all the Israelite elders. Aaron told them everything that the Lord had told to Moses, and he performed the signs in front of the people. The people believed. When they heard that the Lord had paid attention to the Israelites and had seen their oppression, they bowed down and worshiped. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. 55 years ago at the corner of Turk and Taylor in the Tenderloin, one of the most significant events in LGBTQ history occurred, the Compton's Cafeteria Riots. In 1966, 3 years before the Stonewall Uprising in New York City, this corner of San Francisco was a gathering place for the drag queen and transgender community who weren't welcome, who weren't able to be in many of the other bars in the city. This particular all-night cafeteria, Compton's, became a popular hangout and a safe space for transgender people in our city. A safe space because transgender people simply were not safe. Even San Francisco, which was known at the time for countercultural, radical welcome of people of all walks of life, were not welcoming people. Laws on the books allowed police to arrest anyone, but particularly men, for wearing clothing that was deemed only appropriate for the opposite sex. That led to rampant police brutality and physical and emotional abuse of transgender people, including forcibly cutting their hair and publicly checking every article of clothing from head to toe to see exactly what they were wearing. Now, one night, as someone was being dragged out of the cafeteria by a police officer, a friend of that person's threw their hot cup of coffee in the officer's face, and from there, a full-on riot ensued. Quickly, the restaurant banned trans folks from dining there, and that's when picketers started to show up in support of the drag and trans community. Friends, neighbors, other LGBTQ organizations, and a large group of young people who had found support and space to organize with Glide Memorial Church. They were all there. The riot and the protests happened, but didn't solve problems overnight. But in their aftermath, social, mental health, and medical support services began to pop up in the city, and police officers were now forced to consider the transgender community as real people rather than just a problem. Slowly but surely, things began to change for the better. Today, that corner of Turk and Taylor is the center of the world's first transgender district, and it's a part of our city and the world that celebrates the lives, resilience, and presence of transgender people. All this happened because of the tremendous courage of queer people whose lives were truly at risk, but also because of those at their sides, the allies. Allies can come from anywhere: friends, family, neighbors, strangers, coworkers, shopkeepers, therapists, teachers, leaders, and everyday folks. An ally is someone who says, not only do I care about a person, but I care enough to say that what they're going through is part of me too. I want to be with them on their journey, and I want to help them in the ways that I can. From the first steps of coming out to the hard work of seeking justice, allies provide LGBTQ people with safe spaces to share their stories, voices to amplify those stories, energy to sustain the journey, courage to take risks, and even just shoulders to cry on. But for all of us, whenever we face moments of fear and transformation, both individually and in society, allies are crucial. We need the strength that comes when we bind ourselves together with those facing injustice and when we put ourselves on the line for our fellow human beings. Because like all things, transformation, it happens in relationships. It happens in community, and we need others with us to do that work together. So today I want to take a look at our scripture passage with you through the lens of allyship and what it means for us to be allies. Now, throughout this story, we see Moses experiencing quite the range of emotion. We begin with him feeling the pain of the Israelites, his people who are in Egypt, and then the loneliness he feels in exile out of Egypt. And then out of this space, God calls him into this new identity, this new mission to bring the Israelites out of Egypt. Then, if we remember from last week, as God reaches out again and again with this new call, Moses responds again and again with fear. Fear of rejection, fear of failure, fear of shame, fear. But in that final moment, in that cycle of fear, when Moses is really at his most exasperated and he's saying, please send someone else, not me. God gives Moses something or someone. He gives him a person, an ally, his brother Aaron. God's antidote to fear is an ally, someone who'll be with him on this transformative new journey. Now, if we look way ahead in the story, Aaron is certainly not the perfect ally, not by any means. Aaron makes mistakes, leads people astray, which is also an important point to note. Allies will never be perfect, and they themselves are on their own journeys too. But for now, I want us to focus on this moment in our story, this moment of fear and transformation for Moses, and look at two ways that Aaron serves as an ally. And the first is that Aaron listens. When God is telling Moses that he'll have an ally in Aaron, God says, speak to Moses and tell him what he's supposed to say. I'll help both of you speak, and I'll teach both of you what to do. And sure enough, Moses does. Moses speaks, and I can only assume that Aaron listens. And God promises to be somewhere in the middle of that, teaching them about one another and what they need to do. The journey of an ally begins with this listening, and not just learning facts and statistics, but stories and people and their lives and their realities. And that takes a special kind of listening. Henry Nouwen was a 20th century Catholic theologian. He was a priest and lived his life accordingly. However, his journals revealed that he struggled with being gay, though he made the decision not to come out due to his vocation as a priest and how he thought people would respond to that news. And here's how he describes listening. To listen is very hard because it asks of us so much interior stability that we no longer need to prove ourselves by speeches, arguments, statements, or declarations. True listeners no longer have an inner need to make their presence known. They're free to receive, to welcome, to accept. Listening is much more than allowing another to talk while waiting for a chance to respond. Listening is paying full attention to others and welcoming them into our very beings. The beauty of listening is that those who are listened to start feeling accepted, start taking their words more seriously, and discovering their own true selves. Listening is a form of spiritual hospitality by which you invite strangers to become friends, to get to know their inner selves more fully, and even to dare to be silent with you. I want to imagine Aaron listening this way. When Moses comes to him with such fear and such trepidation, I want to imagine Aaron listening with hospitality and without judgment, with welcome, without preconceptions, with curiosity and without expectation. Through listening, an ally can open a wonderfully sacred space that can hold fear and anxiety together with love and grace. And that space leads to acceptance. It gives strength and courage and dignity. As Henry Nouwen puts it, listening in and of itself helps people discover their true selves. To listen is to offer a tremendous gift, but it's also transformative for the listener. When we welcome the stories of another person or another people into ourselves and refrain from judging, we become interwoven with that story. We see ourselves in that story. We see others in that story, and we even see God in that story. We actually meet a new member of our human family. That's what listening can do. Allies listen, and they listen with their whole hearts, knowing that the person or the people they hear are God's very own children. Allies also come as close as they can. I think often we think being an ally means we say, I'm on your side. But what if we looked at that a little bit differently? Now, after God talks to Moses, God talks to Aaron and says, go into the desert to meet Moses. And so Moses went and greeted Moses with a kiss, our story says. Aaron went to Moses. And more than just saying, I'm on your side, Aaron can say, I'm by your side. Because it can be easy to be an ally from afar or think we're an ally from afar. It can be easy to say, I agree with you, or I support your cause, or I stand with you in your community. But when we invest our whole bodies to get close to someone and their story and what they're dealing with, everything changes. We're dealing with flesh and blood, not just ideas. We're invested, and just like listening, we begin to be transformed. Now, here's a story of transformation, and it actually comes from someone who was not an ally. I was recently talking to someone from the Midwest, and we got to discussing a little bit about current events and what's going on in the world and around this person, and he was telling me about his father, who is someone who shares a lot of misinformation on his social media account, including a lot of really pointed content that's very critical of Black Lives Matter, among many other movements that are going on in the country. And this person I was talking to told me that he shared the same beliefs as his father until last year. Last year, he decided to go to a local Black Lives Matter protest. And it was there, he said, that his life was changed because he heard their stories and he saw their faces and he said he experienced their passion. That place and that profound energy of that place changed his life and his entire way of thinking. That happened because of his risk to come close, to be shoulder to shoulder with a community who was experiencing injustice. And it changed everything for this person. What would it mean for us to swap our social media posts and our news reading for real sweat and tears and serve those who need allies? What would happen if we came closer to the things and people that we really do care about? Might we be transformed? Might we become so connected to others that we could never look at the world the same way again? Allies come close. Allies rub elbows and make themselves vulnerable to the life of another to open themselves up to whatever God has for them and to offer themselves in solidarity. Allies listen, and allies come close and come as close as they can, because that's where transformation happens. That's where we find the divine. Today, I want to introduce you all to Andy Bandyopadhyay. He's a writer and a storyteller in New York City who explores all sorts of topics, including gender, class, and identity in his written work. This week, we talked about the fear we face in those moments of transformation and how he experienced God in an ally. Here's a little bit of our conversation. Thank you so much for being here, Andy. We're so glad you're here.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
Tell our folks a little bit about why, words and stories are the way that you express yourself in the world.
I grew up walking distance from NASA's mission control, where all you needed to do to be successful was become a rocket scientist. So science and numbers and math and logic were where I grew up. But what I realized over the years is that's not how you actually make a connection with people. That's not how you reach people. So once I realized that there was a field called Science and Technology Studies that was about doing qualitative ethnographic research and storytelling around science and technology. And I realized that not only could I do this in qualitative research professionally, but I could also make art. I could make art to help people understand difficult things. Let's talk about gender. Let's talk about sexual orientation. Let's talk about class. The idea storytelling is fundamentally about making an emotional connection with another person. At the end of a powerful storytelling session, it always sparks conversations, not just between the performer and the audience, but between audience members and each other.
How would you relate your art of writing and storytelling to spirituality and what you consider your spiritual life?
So what I love about biblical stories and stories from other faiths and really good writing is it's all about core universal human needs and desires. We all want to experience love. We all want to belong. We all want to have a family. We all want to have a safe space to live. We all want to experience beauty and the joy of a sunrise and a sunset. And when you can see those desires and those longings in people who may not look like you at all, who you may think you have nothing in common with, you're able to see the humanity and the divinity in another person. I was raised without any kind of religious or spiritual background. I grew up in suburban Houston, close to NASA. So if anything, we revered nature. I never had a formal church or organized place where I felt like home. But I was always fascinated by these big life questions. Like, what does it mean to be alive? What happens after we die? How do we care for each other through grief? And then when I was in middle school, I noticed classmates starting to argue about religion. And I thought it was so strange because my very cursory 10-year-old understanding was that religion was supposed to be a place that you called home, that was comforting, that was designed to help us cope with hope and loss and grief and big milestones like weddings and graduations. And here were all of these 11, 12-year-olds basically saying, my God is better than your God.
Yeah.
And I thought, what on earth? What is this? I don't understand. And then eventually someone asked me, well, what do you believe? And I was like, I don't know, but I'm a nerd. So I signed up for the mailing list of every religious organization I could find and basically gave myself a self-study world religions course. And I realized at the end of that none of those, particular belief systems felt exactly right for me. But what did feel right was a core sense that every human being is deserving of love and food and shelter and safety and family and kindness.
In your own spiritual journey, you haven't had a lot of connections other than your self-study and perhaps some of these classes to some of the biblical stories. Can you tell me a little bit about your reactions to the story? What stuck out? What perhaps you connected with?
The first thing that struck me was Moses's hesitance at going on this quest that he's been assigned, where he basically says, "Are you sure you can't pick somebody else? I really don't want to do this." Like, that's relatable. That's, even though I hadn't read the specific story, the skepticism of, is this really happening? And the, oh my God, it's really happening and I really don't want to do it. Those are universal. And that's what's so delightful about it. When I first got the inkling that I might be a man, I thought, no, that can't be real. Like, I don't think I'm actually seeing this. I think maybe this is a mirage. Maybe I'm seeing something else. Maybe I just want to do drag. Maybe it's, something different. But no, it was really like reassuring over and over and over. This is who you are. This is who you are called to be. And then in the, okay, but I don't want to do it, I'm married to a straight man. How on earth am I supposed to become a man if I'm a woman married to a straight man? That makes no sense.
What or who was the antidote to that?
Friends, therapists, coworkers, family, obviously my partner. I think the most powerful part of this story is that I am here with you. And we can take strength from that, imagining God saying, I am here with you. And we can be that presence for each other. It's saying, I am here with you through all the messy parts. I'm here with you to celebrate. I'm here with you when you're scared. I am here to make you chai or just eat pasta with you. I am here to go on a walk. If you want to talk about it, we can talk about it. If you don't want to talk about it, we don't have to. We can do something else. And I had that kind of love and care from so many allies in my life. And that gave me the community and the strength to be able to go on this journey with my husband and to say, this is my realization and I'm not going to do this without you.
So we've asked all of our artists to share a piece inside of their art form that uses their creative juices to explore and express a divine time or a divine moment, divine journey in their life. And so I'd love for you to tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I'm going to share a story about Raj, my wonderful ally straight husband, asking me to transition and to stay married, which I never in a million years would have thought possible. Mm-hmm. It's, to this day, something I wake up every day and I'm grateful for, that we've been able to go on this journey together. And I can't think of anything but divine intervention.
Well, let's take a look at Andy's story together.
When my husband Raj and I got married, we stood on the rooftop of our downtown Atlanta loft and vowed to be nerds together forever, to go on adventures large and small until we're old and wrinkly, and even after. We even had nerds together engraved on our wedding rings. I took my vows very seriously. I was a child of divorce, and I promised myself and Raj that we'd stay together. Raj was a child of unhappily married parents, and he promised himself and me that we'd stay happily together. To the outside world, we looked like a straight couple. I was a 21-year-old woman from Houston, and he was a 31-year-old man from Mumbai. But I'd told him I was bisexual on our second date when we were both students at Rice University. "Thank God," he'd said. "Excuse me?" "Well, I've always fallen for androgynous bisexual women. You had long hair. I didn't know if this was going to work." I laughed, smiled, and vowed to get the pixie cut I'd always wanted. That was Raj, a straight guy who hung out with all the queer folks on campus because that's the place he felt most accepted, the place he could be a salsa dancer and learn Chinese and read feminist theory without having to face the doctor, lawyer, engineer expectations of his parents. In my mind, we'd always been queer. A bisexual woman and a queer-adjacent ally. A guy who showed up at Pride because it was a huge party with all his friends. So of course we threw a party when Don't Ask, Don't Tell was repealed. And when we moved to San Francisco, of course we walked down when news of the Supreme Court's decision cascaded through the streets, generations of queers dancing together at the prospect of fully legal federal marriage. But none of that really prepared us for my gradual realization that I was a man. I can't explain it with any verb but calling. I was called into my new gender. A shimmer, a spark, a pull. I had a glimpse of myself as a man, and I knew it was true and right down into my bones. And I was terrified. I had the most queer-friendly straight husband on the planet, and yet he was attracted to women, and if I became a man, he couldn't be attracted to me, even if he tried. How could he possibly stay married to someone outside his orientation? And how could I possibly ask him to do that, to go against his very nature? Over months of therapy, I felt the call into manhood, loud as ever, and simultaneously voiced our vows to be nerds together forever, to go on adventures large and small together, until we're old and wrinkly, and even after. So I told Raj, I've realized I'm a man, but I'm not going to do this without you. I would rather stay married than transition. And he said, you can't not do this. I can't ask you not to be you. We were stuck. Here's the thing about a call. It can be true and right and deep and beautiful and awful. It can be excruciatingly uncomfortable. The easiest thing to do is run and hide, ignore it, hope that the call will fade. But faith doesn't work like that. I answered the call the only way I knew how, by sharing it with Raj. And he answered the call the only way he knew how, by reaffirming our mutual commitment to each other's love and growth. Eventually, he asked me to take testosterone. I protested, but what about you? I'm here, and I will be here. So I brought home my prescription, too afraid to take it. And the next morning, with chai in one hand and testosterone in the other, he said, honey, I brought you your tea. It's been 4.5 years. We just celebrated our 11th wedding anniversary. May you all have the faith and the strength for your own call when it comes.
Friends, allies are so important. They're essential in helping each one of us live into the lives that God has called us to. We need to do that together in community, in love. There's another ally that appears in our scripture reading today, and that ally is God. Over and over again, God reminds Moses, I am with you, I am with you, I am with you. God is with you. God is with each of us in whatever we may be facing, and we can always turn to God to be that ally who will never leave our side. So I now invite you into this time of prayer and meditation to ask God how you can be an ally and how God can be your ally in all the challenges that you may be facing. Let us pray.
Spirit of the living God, fall afresh on me. Spirit of the living God, fall afresh on me.
I love you, Lord, my strength. The Lord is my solid rock, my fortress, my rescuer. My God is my rock. I take refuge in him. He's my shield, my salvation strength, my place of safety. In my distress, I cried out to the Lord. I called to my God for help. God heard my voice from his temple. I called to him for help, and my call reached his ears.
Spirit of the living God, fall afresh on me.
You are the one who lights my lamp. The Lord my God illumines my darkness. With you I can charge into battle. With my God I can leap over a wall. God, his way is perfect. The Lord's word is tried and true. He is a shield for all who take refuge in him.
Spirit of the living God, fall afresh on me.
Now really, who is divine except the Lord? And who is a rock but our God? Only God, the God who equips me with strength and makes my way perfect, who makes my step as sure as the deer's, who lets me stand securely on the heights. That's why I thank you, Lord, in the presence of the nations. That's why I sing praises to your name.